welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at GodsFiveMinutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. 1 Corinthians 15, 9-10 reads, "For I am the least of the apostles, that am not meet to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace which was bestowed upon me was not in vain. But I labored more abundantly than they all, yet not I, but the grace of God which was with me." Throughout all his ministry, Paul was faced with the distasteful task of vindicating his character and apostleship. Thus here, though his main purpose in the context was simply to declare the gospel, he had to turn aside to show there was no significant difference between him and the other recognized teachers of Christian truth. He was forced to do this by persistent efforts in the Corinthian church to deny his apostleship and the faithfulness of his representation of Christianity. His way of doing it is both beautiful and remarkable. "By the grace of God I am," he said, and then, rather than boast of his successes, which he could have done under the guise of showing convincing proof of his calling, he was led to leave that for others. "By the grace of God I am what I am," whatever that might be. "All that I have to say is that God made me and that I helped him. For the grace of God which was bestowed upon me was not in vain. You Corinthians may judge what the product is. I only will tell you how it happened." That viewpoint accents the importance of the grace of God in Paul's life. He had a very definite idea of what he meant by it: the active love of God shown towards us who without it are low and sinful, and the gifts with which that love becomes full, charged to men. These two things are gathered up and stored as in a great storehouse in Jesus Christ himself, and through him are open to us for making us noble and filling us with graces and beauties of character. You see, the two things we need most in order to be better human beings are the motivation and power to keep our consciences clear. We all know enough of duty and right to live much better lives than most people do. It is not because there are not enough examples of high moral character and sweet sunny disposition before us that people go wrong. The grace of God alone, with its two sides of loving and of giving, supplies the missing forces of motive and power. Grace supplies motives. There is nothing that will bend a person's will like love, and there is no greater recognition of love than the divine sweetness of feeling the holy balm of forgiveness wash over one's soul as the old sins are covered by the blood, and sweet innocence comes into the heart that had given up that sensation as forever lost. The companion love that springs up in such a heart toward his divine liberator finds melody in the Master's exhortation, "If you love me, keep my commandments." Grace also supplies power. The Scripture said, "It is God that worketh in us both to will and to do his good pleasure." I believe there's no power available or even known, whether to thinkers or patriots or philosophers and political activists, or those who seek to master any skill or excellence which will lift a life to such heights of beauty and self-sacrificing nobility as will the power that comes to us by communication of the grace that is in Jesus Christ. Describe it as we will, it is a force that must be experienced to be even minutely understood. The proof of this is Paul himself. He began adulthood as a man thoroughly instructed and cultured into the strong belief system he was fully convinced was a proper way to live and in which he was completely satisfied to remain. This system permitted him to congratulate himself even while he was filled with bitter hatred and savage delight in hideous cruelty. The grace of God transformed this deformed wretch into one of the most beautiful spirits in the history of the world, a man so filled with nobility and honor that he was prepared to suffer the loss of everything. To do what? Why, to write, with both his life and his pen, books of the New Testament, in order for you and me to find that same grace. Have you talked to God today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at GodsFiveMinutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.